Welcome to Alien Agenda. This is your host, Tony Teora, and I'm here in Japan to talk about one of my favorite topics. Most people know about it, but there's a few things I suspect that people don't know. This topic is Roswell. Now, I've actually been to Roswell, New Mexico. I took a trip when I went across the country, and the reason I went there is because I knew about the stories about this crash in 1947. People like Stanton Friedman of Rutgers University, my alma mater, he's a physicist. He's done some books on it, and if you're really interested in getting some deep, super details about Roswell, I recommend getting one of his books about Roswell. So, okay, so what's the beef at Roswell? What actually happened at Roswell? Well, what I'd like to say is that I'm like 100% convinced, or I should say 99.9999, because I don't know if you can be absolutely 100% convinced of anything, but I believe it as surely as I believe that that the sun goes. The Earth goes around the sun, that Roswell happened. And here's why. So the American government actually said that it happened. The 509 Squadron, the press guy, when the stuff happened, he said, well, we got a flying disc. So he put out a press release. The government said, yeah, we caught a flying disc finally, and they put it out. But obviously he didn't get permission from his boss. It wasn't the time where you could get these like text messages. It took time. The people in Washington went nuts and told them to shut up, and they sent other people out there. And then they basically showed a gentleman holding like a balloon, and it had a piece of paper saying that that what Mac Brazel had seen at his ranch was just a weather balloon. But there was a lot of mistakes done. So, I'll give you one mistake. Back then, people didn't know that you could actually someday use massive digital analysis of pictures. They actually took the paper that the gentleman was holding in front of that balloon, and they actually were able to read the text on that telegram, and that was analyzed, and you can look at that, and it basically said that they received a crashed saucer, and they had bodies. So I mean, this is like many years later when they analyze the document. So just that alone is enough of a smoking gun to say that that they actually did pick something up. The people in town were interviewed later on, the mortician and all them. They had bodies. They wanted to get iced. I mean, there's tons of stories. People freaking out, in the hospital. I think that's one of the reasons why people try to keep this under wraps, is that it's not every day that a 5-foot body with a big head and bulging eyes, and probably didn't look very good, because these bodies were in the hot desert in New Mexico. So the government covered it up. Also, when you're getting technology like that, they really they didn't even know where it came from. I mean, maybe they thought these were Russians, and I mean, who really knew where this technology came from? So they put it under wraps. And over the years, the government, they couldn't keep it really under wraps. So, like, I think it was in the 90s or whatever, they said, okay, we're sorry, we admit we lied to you. And everybody's like, what? Yeah, it really wasn't a weather balloon. It was some kind of another project with test dummy bodies that we had, because the stories kept coming out with these bodies that were seen, in the desert. So they said, oh, it was just some crash test dummies that we dropped from the sky, and that's why people thought they saw bodies. I mean, they throw enough little information out to trick people, to try to get them to think that nothing really happened. The evidence is there. Roswell happened. So why did it happen in New Mexico, and why in 1947, in July 1947? So I personally think that everybody should just look at the logic, right? When did nuclear bombs start? They started in 1945. So if you're like an alien race, and you're like an interdimensional traveler, or say you're just a race that's able to like look at a planet, you're like, holy smokes, these guys got nuclear weapons, they're now on the map. So also people then say, well, why did this UFO like crash out in the middle of the desert? Like, does it make any sense? Like, it wasn't like they weren't going to the White House. Like, why weren't they at the White House? Well, the funny thing is actually in 1952 they were at the White House. There were a ton of UFOs that like buzzed the Capitol building, and you can find that information too. But in 1947, a lot of people don't know this, but there's White Sands Missile Range. I worked consulting for the military, and I have friends who worked out there. They have tons of high-powered radar, even back in 1947. Now, if it's true that these devices are running on anti-gravity, and maybe they're using this element 115 that we talked about, with Bob Lazar, and they create these various fields, you can only imagine what radar might do. I mean, radar, powerful radar, if you're on a ship, I've worked on ships, if they turn that stuff on, it'll kill you. People have actually died on ships from high-powered radar. It affects all kinds of, electronic equipment. So I have a suspicion that craft was probably not a mother craft or anything like that. I mean, it was a small craft. It probably got affected either by radar, electrical storm, or whatever, but it definitely crashed. Now, people later on swore that they saw the bodies. A guy by the name of Corso said that they actually tried reverse engineering the technology. People like Lazar, worked on UFOs. The ones that Lazar worked on supposedly were actually in very good shape. So I doubt that they were the same ones that crashed at Roswell. I have a suspicion that somehow they got other alien craft that they analyzed. Now, what is the importance of Roswell? Well, from my perspective, when I went to Roswell and I went to the UFO museum there, I went there kind of anonymously and started asking a lot of questions, and I wasn't a reporter. I was just curious. I'm a science fiction author, so this was really fascinating to me. And I got some of the old folks there in the 90s. I think this might have been before the government came out with that BS report saying that it's just crash dummies or whatever. When I walked in there, these guys were telling me, they're like, this happened. They know people who were there. They talked to people. They saw the bodies, and the government just keeps lying about it. Well, it makes sense. Stanton Friedman, the physicist from Rutgers, said the same thing. Basically, it's got to be the highest classification in the government. I mean, like, if I was working for the government, and I'm not, but if I was, I would classify it as the highest level, because it's the super highest technology out there. I mean, you got a device that can fly with anti-gravity. You've got alien beings. I mean, think of the ramifications. I mean, think about like war. Maybe these alien beings think that you shot the thing down, and maybe they're going to send an armada out here. I mean, do you want to tell the people in America and the world, oh, we're sorry, this alien being came here, to talk to us, and we actually shot it down. That's the first thing we did with this alien race. I mean, who knows what they were thinking back then? There were multiple pieces of evidence later on. People had components. They were able to look at the metal. They saw hieroglyphic inscriptions on it. I think Mac Brazel and some of these guys kept some of the stuff. The government went to their houses later on and confiscated it. They also said that they had material that was kind of like aluminum foil, but aluminum foil was light, but they would close it, and then when they opened it up, it had special memory that the material would come back. I think a lot of our material science research and stuff had to be on this. I mean, today with electron microscopes and things like that, I bet you that a lot of our science, is some of it is at least coming from this crash technology. Later on, if you look at what happened since 1947, right, and you try to use an analysis, how quickly did our technology advance since 1947? I mean, it's crazy. Right? If you think about fiber optics, right? The transistor, all this technology that we have now, I suspect some of it is probably from reverse engineered, alien electronics, that, if we can call it electronics, that came out of this device. And Corso, I think it was Colonel Corso, there's another book on that we'll put on the site, talks about how he actually did exactly that. But most of these folks will only talk on their deathbed about this kind of stuff. There's another video that I'll put out, or I'll put a link to, that talks about people who worked at like these skunk works, divisions, these military, shops that had worked on this technology. I think John Pope or somebody, it might have been him or another gentleman, I'm not sure who. That they usually interview people who are old and dying, because at that point they probably don't care about their security clearance. But there's just too much evidence on Roswell. I think Roswell is a smoking gun. I think folks should read, like I said, Stanton's book, AlienLeaks.org. Ron Watkins, AlienLeaks.org will be posting documents on Roswell. A lot of them I think are because they're memory leaks, so some are going to be hard to find. But I think if you look at like the thing called the MJ-12, this I think was formed by Truman after Roswell, because everybody kind of like, you know, got really nervous, you know, when this happened. They said, what are we going to do? We got to keep this secret. We got to hire the smartest scientists. I mean, it just makes sense. And these MJ-12 documents, I believe, were also validated by Stanton Friedman. So you put the MJ-12 together with the Roswell, and you'll basically get the basis for the beginning, you know, of the United States' main research into alien technologies, communications, and the political ramifications. I think that people feel that the political ramifications are just too, I don't know, heavy for the public. People just don't want to believe this. They try. That's why that the government tries to, you know, taint everybody as like a conspiracy theorist or crazy. And the government now is coming out and saying, you know, they have pictures, you know, of devices flying that are beyond our technology, but they want to, you know, say that they don't know where it comes from, and you know, of course, if it's beyond human technology, guess what? It's alien technology. Well, I want to thank you for listening to this show. So if you're enjoying what you're seeing here, please click at the bottom, you know, like and subscribe, and also click the little bell at the bottom. We really appreciate your support. Without your support, we couldn't continue putting out this great information. Thank you.